Garrosh is generally considered a bad guy, and we know he ultimately failed, escaped to alternate Draenor, and then he was defeated in a Makora by Troll. His ultimate goal though was to create the True Horde, the so-called True Horde, an orc-dominant horde, and to accomplish what the original Horde initially wanted, and that is to conquer all of Azeroth. Now, despite the Siege of Orgrimmar and failure, how close was Garrosh to actually accomplishing this goal? Because, let's be real, despite the questionable actions, he was a pretty brilliant military strategist, and that for a time turned Horde into a superpower, but his actions ultimately weakened the faction further. So, what things could he have done differently to accomplish his goal, and how close was Garrosh to actually conquering Azeroth? As you guys might have seen last week, I've been using Prime Gaming, which you can get completely free with your Prime membership. Every single month you can get a lot of items completely free, but right now in World of Warcraft, there is the Crown of Eternal Winter, which you can claim right now. So, as you can see, it is super simple. Just go to the Prime Gaming website, go to World of Warcraft, connect your account, just go here and you complete the claim. Just claim the crown in game and now I can essentially just transmog my orc into the Lich King. There are a ton of benefits joining Prime Gaming. This video is sponsored with free games, exclusive, monthly in-game content for World of Warcraft, and 30+ titles. For example, you can get Hearthstone packs, a leader bundle in Apex Legends, or loot boxes in Overwatch. Every single month there are completely fresh drops, and there is even a free monthly Twitch sub for your favorite streamer. So make sure to get your own Crown of Eternal Winter right now. Click my link in the description, sign up, and claim all the amazing offer Prime Gaming has, just as I did. Garrosh is a really weird character because Blizzard essentially did a 180 on him, and they admitted to this, which is why no one originally saw him turning into this old god-infused bad guy. Garrosh was the son of Grommash Hellscream that was incredibly anxious and lived in his father's shadow, his massive legacy, and because of that, as he was a Hellscream, he had a lot to prove. Now, it is obvious that initially Blizzard planned to turn him from a hothead into a more reasonable guy. At first, Garrosh was all brute force, let's attack without thinking about consequences. Then, he was under the counsel of the experienced warriors such as Varrock Sourfang, and he started learning patience, tactics, honor, more strategic thinking. This was even further exacerbated in the Stone Talon questline, where he dismissed a warlord off a cliff because he committed a crime, and then he talked about honor and how he learned about it. This was in a really stark contrast compared to the Siege of Orgrimmar Garrosh. In Mists of Pandaria, however, Blizzard decided to completely turn him into a bad guy, and then they started setting up the story for this quite quickly. However, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Garrosh was never actually Troll, he was never peaceful, diplomatic, he never actually intended to work with the Alliance. This has been evident from the start and what happened in Northrend. Now, despite his hot-headedness, Garrosh was actually a pretty brilliant military guy. I'm guessing from this perspective he was always planning world conquest, but it took him a few years to actually prepare to embark on this journey. First off, the guy literally completely rebuilt Orgrimmar, turned it from orcish huts scrapped together in a desert into a full-blown metal citadel ready to repel a massive invasion and whatever was to come. Then he improved the ports, he built the infrastructure for war, he started greatly using mechanization and employing goblins to build serious weapons of war. Most importantly, Garrosh was really valuing strength, and for that he wanted to recruit whoever was strong for his mission. For this reason, he brought the massive Magnetar from Northrend, and he actually used them to invade Ashenvale. However, the question is, how close was Garrosh to actually conquering Azeroth? Could it have happened? I can say that he actually could have succeeded, and his mission was done in phases that kinda failed in some regards. As I mentioned, first was improving the infrastructure, reforming the army, and empowering his own base. Then, slowly but surely, he started on removing the Alliance completely out of Kalimdor. First with the Night Elves, second with Theramore. Then, he was bent on conquering Gilneas, of securing a new port, and slowly taking the Eastern Kingdoms from top to bottom. And he wasn't just bent on this, he was actually successful, and he completely outplayed the Alliance quite a few times. Garrosh had limited success with the Night Elves north of Orgrimmar, and he completely and utterly outmaneuvered the Alliance in a brilliant move that no one really saw coming. He feigned attacks near Theramore, which got the Alliance to bring all their forces down there. Now, feeling confident, they brought all their best generals, essentially the brains of the army, the best soldiers. Then, Garrosh launched a frontal attack, which really was a feint, when no one really saw it coming, and he through the back, slipped a mana bomb, completely destroying the main base operations and effectively removing the humans from the southern part of Kalimdor. In this, he also severely weakened the Alliance forces. On the other hand, he did also manage to destroy Gilneas, and through Sylvanas, the northern part of the continent was severely strengthened for the Horde, and it was militarized. Now, here, Pandaria just happened, and that completely changed his focus and turned his conquest to a new continent and a brand new search for power. However, if the random discovery of Pandaria didn't happen, I wouldn't be surprised if he was completely successful in securing the entirety of Kalimdor for the Horde in the very near future. I really doubt Garrosh wouldn't launch the burning of Teldrassil, same as Sylvanas did, and he would completely expect retaliation, which is why he reinforced all the Horde bases. However, Pandaria did happen, and there he decided to conquer as much of the new land as possible and to just drive out the Alliance. This got him to acquire the Divine Bell and ultimately the heart of the old god Y'Shaarj. Now, before we talk about the ultimate old god corruption, let us examine what really was his downfall. Now, the Alliance didn't defeat Garrosh, and honestly, I really doubt they would have been able to defeat him. Not because the Horde was just so much more superior, although they did make a lot of advances against Alliance territory, but mainly because Garrosh was just crazy bent on taking over the world, and he would not care whatever measure he would need to find to conquer it, while the Alliance was really not in the same mindset. I honestly doubt Varian would consume an old god heart to conquer the whole territory. Now, what it was that actually brought Garrosh down was Insurgency, the Rebellion. The thing is, while there were a lot of militant members of the Horde that did want to continue the legacy of the original Horde that followed Garrosh, this was like less than half of the Orcish population, and other than this half of the Orcish population, literally no one actually supported Garrosh. It was really only the Goblin mercenaries that only cared about the money, and the other Orcish clans he recruited for this purpose. However, he completely alienated like 70% of the Horde in the very least. Most importantly, the Trolls and the Tauren, and it was these two races that spearheaded the rebellion. While Varian did obviously march into Orgrimmar, you need to keep in mind that there was no way the Alliance could siege Orgrimmar by itself, not even by a long shot. The only reason this operation was successful is because the Horde was literally split in half, seriously weakening it, and then they sabotaged it from within. They knew all the internal secrets, which allowed the Alliance to land and to unite the Rebel and the Alliance forces. So my point is, had Garrosh managed to suppress the rebellion, he could have actually conquered the entirety of Azeroth, or at least he could have gotten really close to it. Now, that is not to say that Garrosh didn't attempt to suppress the rebellion. He wanted to nip it away right from the start, but he failed. Most importantly, he attempted to assassinate Vol'jin, who really was the leader of the rebellion, and he didn't succeed, which ultimately further emboldened Vol'jin and led to the events that occurred. Now, when the rebellion happened, Garrosh essentially realized he needs to get all the power possible, and he brought a ton of artifacts, turned Orgrimmar into a fortress, and got himself corrupted by old god powers. He was, of course, only shortly exposed to it, so he didn't really turn into an old god minion, but who knows what could have happened if he actually won and we were defeated. However, let us imagine an alternate scenario where he was actually successful. He managed to eliminate the key figures of the rebels, and he managed to keep the integrity of the Horde and to really turn it into the so-called True Horde. Keep in mind, Garrosh did literally remove like half of the races down the line and definitely turned into a complete supremacist, but that also was a response as he realized that they had rebelled against him, so he just kinda doubled down on the things he had done previously. If he managed to keep everything under check, he might not have had to get as extreme as he did. So imagine if there was no rebellion. Well, first off, the Horde would be 2 times stronger than it actually was. Then he could have still went ahead with the old god powers and all the artifacts he had used, and instead of focusing on defense and the defense of Orgrimmar, he could have focused on offensive operations. My opinion is that he would first completely secure Kalimdor and make it impossible for the Alliance to just land anywhere. Then through Sylvanas and her plague, he would focus all the forces and launch a massive invasion towards Stormwind, which of course at the moment we can only really speculate on. I can't say he would conquer the Alliance, but let's just say they would definitely not have an easy time dealing with all this power that he had amassed. Now let's look at one more possibility, and that is the second attempt to control Azeroth. As you may remember, when Garrosh escaped, he tried to reform the Iron Horde to bring it to Azeroth as his new army. This, of course, when you think about it, was really doomed from the start. First is that the original invasion was immediately stopped, and then we went on the offensive. Second is that the actual Horde was fighting him, the entirety of it. And the third, invading from the Dark Portal was really a stupid idea. It worked for the first time like 30 years ago because this was some god-forsaken land no one even visited, and the Horde had already established a foothold when the Alliance learned of this invasion. But now everyone knew where the Dark Portal was. There was a significant Alliance base next to it, and it was just incredibly easy to stop this invasion. There was no way the orcs would be able to push through the Dark Portal and no one would be able to stop them. However, let us imagine a scenario where before doing the final offensive on the Alliance, Garrosh did this same thing as happened in Worlds of Draenor, but no one actually knew about it. So he traveled in time and actually formed the Iron Horde, and he got it ready to invade Azeroth. Then he would pull a second Theramore on the Alliance, this time way more deadly. Imagine this, he strengthened the north of the Eastern Kingdoms and launched a massive invasion there, which would be the entirety of the Alliance military, and they would all be in the north. Now, completely unexpectedly, he would just suddenly reopen the Dark Portal and would launch the massive Iron Horde from the south, which, in my opinion, would give the Alliance literally no chance to fight whatsoever. Now, of course, all of these are what ifs, what would happen if this, if that is just the nature of this video. However, my answer is, had Garrosh managed to stop the rebellion right from the get-go and keep the integrity of the Horde, and had he formed the Iron Horde without anyone knowing, he definitely could have completely conquered the entirety of Azeroth. Would it be good for anyone but his followers that are not just as crazy as he was? It definitely wouldn't, but his plan could definitely have been successful. Thank you for watching. Check out what is happening to Fury and Dragonflight by clicking on the screen, and check out Doronsmovies Academy for videos on Ill World history. See you next time.